עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה 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 yalla la 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 yalla yalla la yalla la 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 yalla la 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 la. Shalom aleichem malachei hasharet malachei elyon melech malachei amlachim hakadosh baruch Bohem Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni LeShalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem L'Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome. Today is the first Shabbat of spring, and those of us who like spring are feeling happy about that. It is also the first Shabbat in the Hebrew month of Nisan, and so in just a few days we will be doing the thing that Jewish people do in the month of Nisan, which is gathering around tables of abundance and retelling our story. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Now we are free. But there's always a, and so now what? Now we are free? It's not enough to say, thank you, God, let us eat. Now we are free means that we must look around this hurting and shabby world and find all the other ways in which human beings continue to be slaves to whatever pharaohs still enslave us. Now that could be actual pharaohs like Vladimir Putin, people who are living under the cloud of fear and terror and oppression. Or it could be those personal pharaohs that hold us back from fulfilling our potential. Or it could be the pharaohs that continue to enslave human beings who are trafficked or who are treated like chattel. So Nisan is a really important time for us not just to celebrate our liberation, but to bring a spirit of liberation to those human beings who most desperately need our help and the hope that we as a Jewish community can bring. On that note, I'm very happy to greet you. I'm Rabbi Jonathan Blake. I'm joined on the bima tonight by Cantor Amanda Kleinman and Rabbi Sasha Bacon, and we want to welcome Rabbi Bacon back from a recent trip to Israel, about which you'll hear more tonight. Making music, lifting spirits, and helping us feel the joy of this Shabbat will be Pete Malinverni at the piano, Jerome Morris on percussion, and Idan Santhaus on flute. Warren Haber, our temple president, joins us on the bima. I see out in the congregation many people who are feeling a special spirit of Shabbat joy, most especially Harper Alkali and her family. Harper will be celebrating her bat mitzvah tomorrow morning on the bima of WRT, together with Nathan Goldfarb, who will be celebrating his bar mitzvah right by her side here on the bima of WRT. And in the afternoon, we also will celebrate the bat mitzvah of Abigail Schildhouse, and we're so happy, Nathan and Harper, that you're here with your brothers and moms and dads, and we'd ask all of you to come up together to help us kindle the lights for Shabbat. Oh, hear my prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen.
Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And let us say Amen.
So to all of our families who are celebrating this special milestone, and doing so at the beginning of the season of Pesach feels especially meaningful. In just a few days, we'll be opening a door at the end of the Seder to welcome in Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. Elijah is the prophet of hope and redemption and the promise of a world made whole. And there's a beautiful poetic passage that's read at the Pesach season that says the way in which Elijah makes the world whole again is by turning the hearts of parents toward their children and the hearts of children toward their parents. And that's our hope for you, children who are celebrating B'nai Mitzvah and becoming adults in the eyes of the Jewish tradition and the Jewish community, that your hearts will be turned each to the other in a spirit of family love and celebration. And so for all of you on our bima, and for all of your loved ones who are out in the congregation tonight, please let us extend to you a heartfelt Mazal Tov. We hope it's a wonderful weekend, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. We'll turn now to page 138, and as we sing Lecha Dodi, we'll kind of help you along with the words, but mostly the words are Lecha Dodi, which means, come, O beloved, to welcome the Shabbat bride. And as is custom, when we get to the last verse and you see me indicate like this, I'll invite us to stand and face the Shabbat bride who comes in through the main doors. 138. Likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Shamor v'zachor b'diburecha,
Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi ימות שבת תחילה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלץ, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Remain standing for our call to prayer 146.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
There was 152.
Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol meodecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavecha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני, אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני, אדוני אלוהיכם.
So last Shabbat, it was winter, and this Shabbat, it is spring. Last Shabbat, it was the Hebrew month of Adar, and this month, it is the Hebrew month of Nisan. Last Shabbat, it was reading from the book of Exodus. This Shabbat, we read from the book of Leviticus. Pesach is the time of great transition, and Micha Mocha, the original song of a people changing its fortune, changing its destiny. 158.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ka'al Yisrael.
Amen. 160.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim Hashkivenu Adonai
Eloheinu leshalom V'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim.
Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us with wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Hamidenu shomreinu lechayim Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Adonai sfatai tiftach, ufi agi tehilatecha. Open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Adonai sfatai tiftach, ufi agi tehilatecha. Open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imahot, U'mevii Geula livnei bneihem, Leman Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע.
משיב הרוח
ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומיתו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה.
ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל,
ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
So this new book of Leviticus that we start this week, its first Torah portion as well, are called in Hebrew vayikra, which is a verb that means the divine called out. I know that during the winter, sometimes it becomes a little bit harder to hear something that moves us, that stirs us, that moves us to a place of holiness and joy, because our spirits are also hibernating. And I hope that maybe at this new season of the year, with Pesach approaching, a new book of Torah in front of us, there might be just a little bit of thaw, and the spirit that's been hibernating for the winter might start to stir again. And the way it will find its expression as the divine calls out to us is in our calling out to God through prayer. And you can find that prayer in the words of the Siddur, but you might just as well find it within in a few moments of silent reflection. If it's your custom to remain standing, please do, or if you would like to sit, you may now take your seats. Stop.
Page 651. My good God, keep these safe, the honey and the sting, the bitter and the sweet, and our baby daughter, the burning flame, the pure water, and the man returning home from afar. Keep all these safe, my good God, the honey and the sting, the bitter and the sweet. Do not uproot what has been planted. Do not forget the hope. Return me, and I will return to the good land. Al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamad ve'hamatok, al biteinu hatinoket shmorei li hatov, al ha'esh ha'mevoeret, al ha'mayim hazakim, al ha'ish hashav ha'baita min ha'merchakim,
So they say never to preface yourself, but I have two prefaces for tonight. The first, I just want to thank Rabbi Blake for being both a thought partner and editor of my work for tonight. And I also want to say, you'll see as I continue to talk that I love dialogue. So if your ears perk up after I speak and you want to keep talking, please email me. I would love that opportunity. A couple of weeks ago, I agreed to attend a mission trip to Israel, along with 23 rabbinic colleagues. The UJA Federation of New York organized this timely excursion because of the vital role Israel plays, not only for its citizens, but also for us, for Jews living in the diaspora. The UJA has noticed the rising concern many of us have felt watching the current crisis in Israel unfold from afar, and they recognize that Israel is in need of our support. During this trip, we had the great privilege of hearing from representatives of Israel's diverse spiritual, moral, organizational, and political leadership. Their insights helped us gather and sort through the varying opinions about what is taking place in the government and how it is affecting the larger population. Tonight, I want to share my insights with you using the framework presented by Makom, an educational project of the Jewish Agency for Israel that invites us to learn about and talk about Israel by unpacking the most important, well, arguably the most important line in Hatikvah, Israel's national anthem. The translation of Hatikvah goes like this: as long as the Jewish spirit is yearning deep in the heart, with eyes turned toward the east, looking toward Zion, then our hope, the 2,000-year-old hope, will not be lost. Lehiyot am chofshi be'artzenu, the land, to be a free people in our land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. Lehiyot, to be, a people, chofshi, free, be'artzenu, in our land. It seems seasonally appropriate that as we began the new month of Nisan just yesterday, in which Pesach will be celebrated beginning in just 10 days, that we would approach these 4 Hebrew words in the spirit of the 4 questions. The conversation about Israel proposed by Makom does just this. It takes that phrase, Lehiyot am chofshi be'artzenu, to be a free people in our land, and uses it as a launch pad to ask what they call the 4 Hatikvah questions, 4 essential questions about Israel. Lehiyot, to be. This is the first fundamental question. What will it take for Israel to exist? What security requirements does Israel need in order to be? A people. This is the second question. What and who are we talking about when we talk about the Jewish people? Whom does this include or exclude? Chofshi, free. The third question. How do we define freedom? What do we expect of Israel as a democracy? And be'artzenu, in our land. The fourth question is this: what does it mean to belong to a land? What happens when others claim the same land? So let us begin with the question of lehiyot, to be, to exist. What will it take for Israel to exist? What security requirements does Israel need in order to be? On the very first night of the UJA trip in Israel, we heard from journalist and author Mati Friedman, who, by the way, spoke here at WRT in 2019, and who stressed that Americans do a disservice when we project American politics and societal issues onto Israel. most specifically when we discuss the left and right wings of the country. In America, being on the left or on the right is usually associated with the politics of social and financial issues. For example, liberals and conservatives in America tend to disagree over the right to bear arms, abortion, healthcare, taxes, etc. In Israel, however, being on the left or on the right is often about security issues. The fundamental disagreements between left and right in Israel are over a matter of lichiyot. What does Israel need to preserve its existence? What even defines an existential threat? According to Mati, even all Likudniks, members of the dominant right-wing party and their voters, largely fit with America's Democratic Party on social issues. They believe in the right to abortion, strict gun control, access to health care, and so on. As in American society, however, Israel is experiencing a contraction of the center as people become more and more polarized around the current issue of judicial reform, which I will get into in a moment. But even more fundamentally, Israel's current crisis is a disagreement between how the left and right define what constitutes an existential threat to Israel. Number two, this brings us to the question of peoplehood. What and who are we talking about when we talk about the Jewish people? Whom does this include or exclude? Though the non-Jewish Arab voice is important in today's Israel, representing as it does about 20% of the population, it will not be the focus of tonight's conversation. So when we talk about peoplehood, we are referring to our people, the Jewish people. According to many of the speakers we met on our UJA trip, the judicial reforms are not a cause, but rather a symptom of the identity wars and Jewish tribalism that have consumed the country for decades. The current governing coalition is made up of Haredim, that is, ultra-Orthodox Jews, religious Zionists, Sephardim, and Mizrahim, Jews who hail from countries outside Central and Eastern Europe, all of whom together make up well over half of Israel's population. People on Israel's left and right both agree that the right wing is nursing raw wounds that have been festering for the past 30 to 40 years, and that many of these grievances are rooted in disparities between Israel's ethnic subgroups. Since the foundation of the state, the following incidences have led to a litany of grievances. First, the Altalena affair in 1948. The Altalena was a ship purchased by the Irgun, Israel's original right-wing underground defensive unit during the War of Independence. Though many viewed the Irgun as a Jewish terrorist group, the Irgun, unlike the Haganah, the official precursor to today's IDF, welcomed participation from Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews, whereas the Haganah was predominantly Ashkenazi. In the summer of 1948, the Haganah and the Irgun planned to join forces to form what would become the IDF. Soon thereafter, this ship, the Altalena, was sent to Israel loaded with fighters and weaponry. When the ship docked, however, the fighters were met by multiple attacks from the Haganah, so fellow Jews, in which 32 Irgun fighters were killed and 200 were arrested. To this day, many Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews in Israel carry the memory of the Altalena as a source of pain and betrayal by the Israeli establishment. A second source of grievance, the Oslo Accords, the officially recognized peace process with the Palestinians, spearheaded by then Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and the PLO's Yasser Arafat, were supported mainly by the Ashkenazi secular sector of society, but condemned by Likud today's dominant party. And third, Israel's disengagement from Gaza in 2005, which displaced settlers from 21 Israel settlements, thereby affecting mostly right-wing Israelis, especially the religious Zionists, who to this day feel embittered and disenfranchised. The right wing, particularly the Sephardim and Mizrahim, even feels excluded by Israel's Declaration of Independence, which references the Holocaust, but which does not reflect their realities as descendants of refugees from the Arab Middle East. The Israeli left has its own grievances as well. Grievances that pertain to the question of peoplehood, and who among the Jewish people is included or excluded, who is favored or disfavored. Current grievances on the left, however, stem less from ethnicity and more from religion. Simply put, most of the left in Israel is comprised of people who think of themselves as secular Jews, who comprise a majority of the population, but who chafe at the over-empowerment of the ultra-religious Jews who comprise a minority, and yet who have vast influence over matters of religion and state. Special governmental protections for Haredim who refuse to serve in the IDF, for instance, or governmental restrictions on public transportation on Shabbat, foisted on the secular public by ultra-Orthodox legislators, have led to the left's long-simmering resentments. Because the many present-day tribes of Israel have competing visions of Jewish identity, these divisions call into question the very nature and makeup of our peoplehood. Who defines what it means to be Jewish? Who is included in the of Hatikva? And so we arrive at Chofshi, the word meaning free, the third question. How do we define freedom? What do we expect of Israel as a democracy? Policies about peoplehood invariably affect and reflect the ways in which the various members of Israeli society are seen and included and represented in positions of authority. In other words, which Jews are empowered and which are marginalized directly determines the shape and scope of Israeli democracy and how freedoms are defined in official policy. For example, even the Haredim, Sephardim, and Mizrahim represent over half of Israel's population, but there is only one non-Ashkenazi judge on the Supreme Court. And by the way, no Haredi judges. In other words, Israel has a Supreme Court unelected by the public and dominated by what its critics see as an Ashkenazi liberal elite. To make matters worse, as you may have read in what I wrote for this week's WRT e-blast, Israel does not have a constitution, but rather a set of so-called basic laws, which in reality have no superior authority over regular laws. Further, judges can override laws based on justiciability, meaning their subjective opinions about whether or not a law seems reasonable without requiring any sort of precedent to justify their decisions. So in order to create proportional representation, the Likud party and its governing coalition is proposing judicial reforms that give elected officials, meaning the Knesset, Israel's legislature, the power to select judges in order to change what is currently a revolving door and to rectify what they perceive to be a history of injustices. Thus, the right wing believes that their proposed reforms fulfill Israel's democratic values, since the elected officials would be the ones to finally implement policies that genuinely represent the needs and desires of the populace. And then we get to the left wing. The left wing, however, sees things differently, to say the least. Though the majority of the left has come to agree that the government is in need of a process of review and revision, because at present, Judges possess an imbalanced degree of power. The left also recognizes that some of the proposed reforms jeopardize Israel's character as a democratic state. So much so, in fact, that Israelis on the left are referring to these reforms as a coup or an assault on Israeli democracy, and hundreds of thousands are taking to the street in protest. For example, reforms such as the override clause, which thwarts judicial review of Knesset legislation, the restriction of judicial review, and the inability to try a sitting prime minister for violating the law, erase all checks and balances within the government and create a scary potential for authoritarianism. These fears worsen when we remember the increasingly fanatical religious presence in both the general population and within the governing coalition, whose desires infringe upon the civil liberties of secular society. These civil liberties include LGBTQ+ rights, which are considerably protected in Israel, even though gay marriage is not recognized and marriage being controlled by the ultra-Orthodox rabbinate. Israelis who prize their civil liberties also fear an assault on their ability to study in liberal academic settings, or even to enjoy public activities in co-ed settings, as well as imbalanced expectations for military service between secular Jews and religious Jews. And as if all of this weren't complicated enough, we need to consider what is meant by the word be'artzenu, in our land. And so the fourth question is this: what does it mean to belong to a land? What happens when others claim the same land? Of course, this begs the question of the role of Israelis' Arab citizens, its Palestinian neighbors, and of Jewish settlements in the West Bank. The land is also the primary motivating factor for those religious Zionists who are represented in the current governing coalition, many of whom have also felt disenfranchised by the state over the last 40 years. For them, the greatest goal is the realization of a greater Israel, a sovereign Jewish state in all of the biblical Eretz Yisrael, which includes the territories. If only we had time to unpack this fourth and potentially most complex question. Like the four questions at the Pesach Seder, it may simply need to suffice for now that we are asking the important questions, recognizing that some questions lack easy answers. The goal with the four Hatikva questions, as with the four questions of the Seder, is to get us all engaged in a robust conversation, not to arrive at easy solutions for vexing conundrums. As philosopher and author Micha Goodman told us on our trip, this moment is encapsulated by a single word, mishaver. In modern Hebrew, mishaver is a crisis, but in biblical Hebrew, a mishaver is a birthing stool. Hence, this moment can go in one of two ways. It could be a moment of destruction and dissolution, or it could be what he calls a constitutional moment, one in which Israelis pull together to, quote, change the rules of the game, to reimagine the structure of government in such a way that gives birth to a true constitution, one that Israel's founders envisioned from the start. Goodman argues that the perception of a country filled with people hating one another is actually an optical illusion, a surface reality that masks a deeper truth. In truth, what all these different Israelis want is actually similar: a government that operates for the benefit of its citizens, that creates a society that promotes acceptance of themselves, of their interests, of their tribes, within the broader Israeli public. In short, l'chiyot am chofshi ba'artzenu, to be a people free in our land. Already, citizens, thinkers, and politicians alike have entered into dialogue over the judicial reform, over the future of Israel, engaging rather than disengaging. We spoke with Ella Ringel, who founded an organization called the Fourth Quarter, devoted to creating constructive discourse across identity lines, to increase civic engagement and to elevate the voice of the center. We spoke with members of CoLab, a program established in 2015 by the UJA Federation of New York, which selects cohorts of Israeli fellows of different backgrounds to come together and explore their identities and deepen their relationships so that their differences become a source of dialogue rather than an obstacle. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis, as I said, have taken to the streets, secular, Orthodox, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, young and old, gay and straight, all holding Israeli flags, singing Hatikva, the hope. Many of the speakers we heard referenced the Talmud's most famous line about dispute within the Jewish tradition. Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chachayim hen. A divine voice emerged and said, both these and those can be the words of the living God. From our seats in America, we so often want to shout at Israel what we think are the right answers. But if I learned anything on this trip, it's that sometimes we need to listen. We need to check our own assumptions. We need to remember Elu ve'elu. Both these and those can hold measures of truth. So what can we do, you might ask? We can lean into our love of Israel, as the Mishaver, the birthing stool, would suggest, a labor of love, whether or not we admire the government. We can learn from Israelis by leaning into the dialogue, not to prove a point or to preach what we think is right, but with the curiosity to learn what it truly means, L'chiyot am chofshi ba'artzenu, to be a Jewish people devoted to the ideals of democracy, a democracy that serves us all, in a homeland that through it all is ours. And if we can do that, well then, there is hope.
Please rise.
Be seated. So we take that hope that we just cultivated together, and we pour it into thinking of those who are in need of healing, whether in mind, body, or in spirit. So I invite anyone who wishes to say a name aloud of a loved one they are holding in their heart as my eyes meet yours. Today, WRT is holding in our hearts Marlene McCormick, Jennifer Leventhal, Jeffrey Millman, Malka Gila Batbina, Emerson Lorenzoni, Stephen Gilberg, Yochanan Ben Sipora, Judy Balsam, Ilana Bat Shmuel, Leah Bat Nina Bat Benjamin, Rachel Bracha, Ashley Norfleet, Tony and Gina DeLappa, Matthew Atwood, Anthony and Elizabeth Dankner, Deborah Kapnick, Nicole Shusi, Andrew Goldstein, Chava Batsara, Eliyahu Chaim Ben Fredel, Sheila Fried, Malka Tzipora Bas Rachel, Tamar Bat Malka, Deborah Greenfield, Heschel Meir Ben David Achana, and Jenny Kaufman. Together we turn for the Misha Berach to page 371. If able, please rise for the Aleinu on page 586.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, lateit gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishbechot adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, vanachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני ושמו echad.
We turn now to thinking of our loved ones who are no longer with us in the flesh, but remain with us in our hearts and in spirit. We rise in the following order. If you are honoring Shiva 7 days since the passing of a loved one, please rise. If you are in a period of Shloshim within 30 days of the passing of a loved one, please rise. If you are in Shana within 1 year of the passing of a loved one, please rise. And if you are commemorating a yahrzeit, remembering the anniversary of a loved one's passing, please rise. We now invite the entire congregation to rise in solidarity with our mourners. Today, WRT is remembering those taken from us in recent days. John Kaufman, father of Luis Riddle Kaufman, Jean Alter, and Mark Kaufman, Kenneth Zalesnik, husband of Carolyn Zalesnik, Phil Basser, father of Sherry Potter, Dorothy Golub, mother of Larissa Golub Wagner, Suzanne Chesler, mother of Matthew and Mark Chesler, Eleanor Greenfield, cousin of Steve Siegel and Fran Scheffler Siegel, Arthur Hirschberg, grandfather of Danielle Holtzman, Joan Herford Halpern, mother of Nancy Clarvett, Ariel Campbell, cousin of the Pollard Stein family. WRT is also remembering those whose yahrzeit falls on this Shabbat. James Allen, Arthur A. Chabrack, Zvi Chashinsky, David Dodes, George Doroshow, Mariana Dranitz, Estelle Drazen, Ralph Dubin, Lottie Ellertson, Ellie Ellis, Janet Ellis Myman, Sonia Engelson, Donald Grant, Lawrence Furrenbaker, Alan Feil, Michael Fish, Clara Friedman, Rose Gluck, Florian Goodman, David Greenberg, David Grossman, Susan Grossman, Augusta Kaplan, Asher Katz, Loris Keats, Charles Kotowitz, Pearl Kravitz, Francis Leibowitz, Berta Lenskis, Mia Lerner, Abraham Levine, Murray Levine, Irving Lipton, Max Lyons, Irving Menlau, Ron Meyer, Aaron Meyerson, Cecile K. Miller, Elaine H. Morse, Steve Neidish, Sylvia Orenstein, Robert Princer, Iris Rogers, Emma Rosen, Maurice Solomon, Walter Sullivan, Michael Tanser, Sydney Weissenberg, and Jerome Weiner. If I have inadvertently mispronounced the name of a loved one, or you are remembering someone whose name we did not mention, I invite you to say their name aloud now. Together, we turn to page 598 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabba, ba'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'yimru, amen. Yehe shmei rabba mevarach le'alam ul'almei almaya, yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh, v'yit hadar v'yit aleh v'yit halal shemei dekudesha b'rechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru, yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru, amen.
Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'yimeru, amen.
You may be seated. I would like to invite up President Warren Haber to offer us some announcements.
Good evening. I'd like to thank our greeters this evening, Mike Rahimi and Helene Lorinsky. Please join me in offering a hearty mazel tov to Nathan Goldfarb and his family, as well as Harper Alcalay, her family, and Abigail Schildhaus and her family, who are all celebrating this weekend. Tomorrow morning we have Torah study, as normal, at 9 a.m. in person in the Sifriyah. Sharing Shabbat is on the road, off-site. We have a special opportunity on Sunday for those of you who are climate activists to join Rabbi Bacon, so feel free to contact her. On Thursday, as normal, we have Talmud at 10:15 via Zoom with Rabbi Blake. The WRJ's annual Women's Seder is coming up. Our cup runneth over, Thursday, March 30th at 6 p.m. You can register online. We also have a major blood drive coming up on Sunday, April 2nd from 9 to 1:30 in the CJL. And as I've mentioned a number of times, we have 2 amazing trips to Israel coming up later this year, so please check online to learn more. Shabbat Shalom.
I'd like to Just one more announcement about an event that's coming up in about a month. On Tuesday evening, April 25th, which is Erev Yom HaAtzmaut, the beginning of Israel's Independence Day, where we'll be celebrating 75 years of Israel, WRT will be hosting a concert featuring Achinoam Nini, who is one of the most important and acclaimed Israeli singer-songwriters. In addition to her prominence in Israel, Achinoam Nini has represented Israel all around the world, including at the Eurovision competition and as the first Israeli to perform at the Vatican. She's actually been invited back, I think, 8 times since then. It is a really big deal that we are having her here, and tickets are available now, and we hope that you'll join us on Tuesday night, April 25th.
At this time, why don't we stand together and sing Oseh Shalom? You can open your prayer books to page 625, open your voices and your hearts to sing with us.
It's actually going to be Adon Olam instead of Oseh Shalom.
What did I say?
Oseh Shalom.
Oh yeah, it's Adon Olam.
But Adon Olam's good too. So,
yeah, it's all
okay,
good.
great.
These are new progressives, my friend. What do you want? 625.
Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'ein nasa v'cheso kol azai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kitlot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lemaaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'charta Viltanu kidashta Mikol ha'amim V'shabbat kodshecha Be'ahava uvratzon Hinchatanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
that was nice.
Almost
I liked it.
done.
Pesach is around the corner. Enjoy the challah while you can.
Also, I can tell by the color of this challah, it's one of the egg challahs, and it's amazing. So
It's
if you
very-
want to taste it,
So-
come on up later.
Shall we do a motzi?
Let's do a
All
motzi.
right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.